Jai Shri Ram. Um, it's a walk down memory lane. I've been in the United Kingdom for the best part of 58 years now. And so I had the majority of my education in this country. And being in the United Kingdom was an interesting experience because we were probably the first generation who really encountered the turbulent aspects of an identity conflict. Remember, the United Kingdom, Great Britain, is the home which colonized half of the world and then taught the world that it had colonized their history, who they were, what were their value systems. All of those things were deeply embedded into the narrative which was created by the British. And so, growing up as a young person in Britain, you had literally two identities. There was the identity which you were receiving from your parents, and the identity that you were receiving from the rest of British society. And the two didn't match. And so we grew up literally trying to reconcile who are we? On the one hand, we are meaningless, insignificant descendants of a savage barbarian civilization which was brought into the light by the British colonizers. And on the other hand, our parents were telling us the zero was created by the Hindus, and we have all these incredible Shastra and Yoga Abhyas and everything else, and the two never married really. And so that conflict was pretty much present in the minds of everybody who grew up in the 80s and the 90s. Being different, the book Being Different, is probably the one where I first encountered Rajivji's work, but more importantly, where I encountered a framework which allowed me to understand what the cacophony that was inside of us, what its roots were, where it came from. And I think most importantly, it actually gave us permission to be different. It created that understanding that who we were and who we thought we were possibly two different things, and there was nothing wrong in being completely harmonious and naturally expressing what your sanskar were. And so being different is really when I encountered Rajivji, and that was in 2013. And so it's quite a long time ago. Um, that immediately encouraged me to have a look at what other works Rajivji had produced. And obviously, Breaking India is a natural consequence of discovering who you are and why it was that the world you were in had so many question marks and so many conflicts and so many inconsistencies. We had already begun the journey of understanding what colonial British history was being based here. The history that we were taught in schools was clearly full of huge gaps. And so you would leap from Henry VIII and his multiple wives, and suddenly you're into the Second World War. And in between, there was no account of anything. And yet we fitted right into that space and time. And so what the second work that Rajiv had produced, which I encountered, Breaking India, what it allowed me to do was to place into context jigsaw pieces which really were visible to us by their absence. So we could see gaps. And then when I read through the book, suddenly the gaps that we were aware of were filled in one by one, and a complete picture appeared of why it was that Bharat was the way it was, who was responsible for the discord within us and also within the nation. And it was an extraordinary experience to have somebody map out and provide evidence, irrefutable evidence, reliable evidence upon which you could then be able to say, this is who we are. This is the reality of what was done to us. This explains why we've been scattered across the globe and why the Bharatiya identity and the Bharatiya nation looks like a traumatized civilization. There's a great deal of pain, there's a great deal of suffering, there's a great deal of shame. All of those things humiliated people, traumatized people have is very present in the fabric of our society. And when I went through Breaking India, I went through it several times. It suddenly made it clear to me what the reality was of Bharat in the early 2000s. One of the changes that occurred after I'd read both Being Different and then Breaking India, it's like a moment on the road to Damascus, isn't it? When you have a revelation, when you have an aha moment, you can't undo what you have seen and what you have realized. And suddenly you find yourself in a world which was different to what you had thought. And your place in that world and the footsteps that you've taken to get to where you are in that world, suddenly the background has shifted. And so there's no going back. And one of the really wonderful things I felt was that knowing how you had gotten to where you were, knowing the truth about your ancestry, and having a solid basis upon which to understand why there were so many people with so many psychoses. It's almost as though one's spine becomes straighter and stronger, and you're able to stand with a much prouder and a more noble sense about who you really are. When you have that pride in your ancestry, when you have that pride in the civilization that's given you your sanskar, you become a better and a stronger person. You become more stable and more confident. And I think that's one of the blessings of those two books in particular. They were genuinely aha moments that were given to me, and that transformed everything that I was doing. I suddenly felt that this information, it needs to be shared with so many other people. This knowledge needs to be shared with every other youngster. The revelations in Rajiv Ji's book were reliable enough for people to stand upon and challenge the status quo. And that was a wonderful thing. And so, in challenging the status quo, all of us became better and stronger and better equipped to navigate the challenges that Hindus were facing. So that was my first introduction to Rajiv Ji and the impact that it had upon me. And I did reach out to him to express how grateful I was and set about trying to have others become aware of his work. So having read those books and become aware of the battle that Rajiv Ji had been fighting, and it was clear that it was a battle that was being fought. You know, the Goliath that is colonialist academia is a Goliath, and it's quite a frightening one because their power is very present and they use it very liberally to maintain their hegemony. And so for a lone person to be challenging this Goliath was an inspirational an example to all of us. And so I wanted to meet Rajivji, and I reached out to him and I suggested to him that it'd be really worthwhile doing a couple of events here in the United Kingdom. And first, he said, I don't want to do them in the United Kingdom. I know the Hindu community in the United Kingdom. They're not reliable. They're not, the attention to detail is not good enough, and so on. I've had lots of experience, and they can't take instructions. And I'm listening and I'm thinking, okay, this is actually quite um, a forceful individual who's got a very clear idea of how he wants things done. Um, but having read the books, I was completely happy to be fully accommodating. You know, I thought this is a person who has earned the right to dictate how he wants events to be held. And so I suggested to him that I could organize an event in Parliament and maybe Oxford University. And he said, okay, but I have a condition. You need to follow the instructions I give to you. And I thought, ठीक है, चलेगा, you know. It was apparent to me already that I often say that our tradition is a Rishi tradition. And, you know, we have our shlokas, asatoma satgamaya, you know, allow me to see into the depths of what Satya is. And his works stand as a testament that here is a person who has been able to see in the depths of Satya in many instances. So I thought, great, I'm happy to go along with any instructions that he gives us, and let's organize this event. So we organized an event that was in the British Parliament. And the event was in March 2018. And we also decided that if you're working on challenging academia, why not organize an event to be held in Oxford University itself? And having had the conversation with him, it was probable that we were going to face some challenges with the second event. But anyway, he gave me a list of how he wanted the parliamentary event to be organized. We handled exactly the right cameras that he was hoping for and the means whereby it was to be recorded. And I remember to this day that it wasn't until afterwards that we realized that the precision with which he had planned this event was the same precision with which he actually did his research and sculpted his narrative and presented his books. So just being able to organize an event with him, it taught myself and my team a huge amount. And the event was incredibly successful. The parliamentary event was a phenomenon. And it takes courage for people to go into the British Parliament and start the conversation about reparations. And I thought this needs to be done. And Rajivji was fully on board with it. And so he started the conversation on soft power reparations. And that was, I think, a phrase that he introduced just for that particular event and to launch it into the minds of people who were attending. And so we had a wonderful event, full house, and plenty of parliamentarians who came. And it was a masterclass, and I really would recommend everybody have a look at it on YouTube. That was the first event we held. It went through wonderfully. And then 2 days before the event in Oxford University, the plug was pulled. And the event was decolonizing academia. And so we thought it would be entertaining. किसी के घर में घुस के उनकी पिटाई करना is not something that everybody can do, but it's a part of the nature of one Punjabis, but also people like Rajiv ji. And so we thought we would do a decolonizing academia event in Oxford University. So we weren't overly surprised when the plug was pulled. We had an alternative venue, which was a lovely venue in the centre of Oxford. A lot of students came. The publicity was added to by the fact that it had been challenged and cancelled. And so that was also a wonderful event. And at that event too, Rajiv ji shared and inspired and gave a lot of Oxford University students a more complete picture of who they were and perhaps what their role was at this time in history. And so both of those events went through so smoothly, and it was a absolute pleasure and a joy to work with him. And any event that I've organized subsequent to them, to those two events, I try and adopt the same attention to detail, the same quality. In fact, I remember a phrase that Rajiv ji shared with me. He said, Panditji, just remember, you're making a movie. Forget everybody else. It doesn't matter who's in the room. You're making a movie. Approach it as though you're making a movie. And he was absolutely right. I can see the wisdom of that teaching way back, 2018 was quite some time ago now. And so it was wonderful to be in the presence and to work with a master at his craft. There are lots of people who produce work which never leaves the shelves of academics, universities, and libraries. Rajiv Ji's work is not like that. And I think that in itself is a testament to how much in tune he was with the zeitgeist. He was absolutely in tune. He had his finger on the pulse of something that needed to happen. And when I think about where his work is situated, the way I see it is he was like a miner. He went into the darkness of our past and our history and dug, and he uncovered gold. He uncovered 24 karat gold. In fact, what he uncovered, I would suggest, was probably uranium. And it's given us the machinery and the raw materials with which we can create weapons out of words. In order to be able to change the world that we live in, you need to act. And in order to act in a manner which is correct and which is going to be successful, you need to have an understanding, not just of the Kurukshetra, but you need to have really powerful words, which are the weapons in the Kurukshetra of narrative. And so when I look at Rajiv Ji's collection of books that he's produced, all I see is weapons grade plutonium and weapons grade uranium. There is such a stockpile of raw material which is available and is going to be available for a long period of time to help equip those people who are now engaged in bringing about the change. And so his contribution in that space is massive. I think if there is one person who started the task of raising awareness, that stage that we had to go through, we became aware of what our circumstances were. That task of raising awareness, Rajivji's work has already done more than enough raising awareness to equip us with everything we need to translate that awareness now into action, and then from action to translate it into change. The next step is for those who had the Kshatriya Tattva introduced into their intellect to now go into the battlefield with that same Kshatriya Tattva and make change. It's very akin to the conversation between Sri Krishna ji and Arjuna. Arjuna is given all the material, he's given everything he needs. And then at the end of it, his instruction is Yata ichasi tata kuru. And that guru means go out there and do things. And so I think all of us are better equipped to go out there and do things to reacquire our position in the history of humanity, but also to see clearly which boundaries have been breached. We have physical boundaries that have been breached, but even deeper ones, we have psychological, emotional, and intellectual boundaries which were transgressed upon and they were breached. And now we have the opportunity and the responsibility to start to take the raw material, the weapons grade ammunition he's given to us and re-establish those boundaries, and then to defend those boundaries, and even to throw people out who have transgressed into our civilizational planes, to actually throw them out and say, you belong on the other side of these boundaries. You have been traipsing around in our hearts and our thoughts for such a long period of time. We now know that actually we don't need to justify who we are. Right? We're more than equipped now to throw you out and evict you from our minds and from our words and from our actual emotions. And so Rajivji's contribution in helping us to re-establish those boundaries is phenomenal. The impact of it will be felt for many, many years to come. And genuinely, it's we've been in the presence of a modern day Rishi. He saw deeper than any of us had seen. He had the courage to express what he had seen in a manner which was irrefutable and it couldn't be challenged. And he has gifted it to us in a manner that we can make use of it and continue with that incredible work. So I'm deeply, deeply grateful and very appreciative to be able to receive the hard work, the fruits of his labor, so that we can continue to re-establish and to reconnect our Bharatiya civilization with its trajectory. As a civilization, we had an arc that we were following, and we were knocked off that trajectory and literally tumbled back to ground zero. And then the journey back to getting onto that trajectory has really been facilitated by his work. And anybody who follows it will find that it will restore their understanding of where they have to go and what they have to do very, very quickly. So I'm really honored and delighted to have been able to support him and help him and give greater exposure to his work. And I look forward to continuing to do that. I'm deeply grateful. So my namans to our dear Rajiv ji and Jai Shri Ram to him as well. He has been an example for so many of us. Well, as Rajiv ji celebrates his 30th anniversary of the Infinity Foundation, I don't think any of us have a right to ask more of him. He has given so much already, and if it was anybody else, I'd be saying you have now earned the opportunity to sit back on your laurels and enjoy the results and the fruits of your actions. But then a part of me says he's not going to do that. We have somebody who knows that each of us is given a body with a limited lifetime, that it has a number of breaths that each and every one of us um, will use. And I know that he will use every ounce of Pran Shakti to continue the seva that he has done. So I cannot offer him any advice. I can offer him a great deal of appreciation. And I really do hope that he has the opportunity to fully enjoy and to laugh out loud at the journey that he has been on and to enjoy the happiness that he has every right to expect from this. I'm looking forward to being with him on the 30th, and I hope all of us gather to embrace him and to appreciate the work that he's done. I think there are very few who deserve the embrace that we should all be giving to him. So I look forward to doing that. Rajiv, thank you so much. Please do continue your work, and I look forward to being the beneficiary of your efforts in the years to come.